down that camera and strap in. It's time for another episode of TOGCHAT Live. Get ready for 60 minutes of wall-to-wall photography, including photo news and tips, along with your photography questions in real time, with answers from your host, Olympus Visionary Joe Edelman.
Hey gang, good Wednesday evening, and thanks for joining me for episode number 210 of TOGCHAT Live. You guys are awesome. I appreciate seeing all of you here. I hope that you're healthy and safe and, of course, practicing your social distancing. I'm seeing photographers already joining from all over the world, so please be sure, check in, leave a comment, let me know you're here and where you're watching from. I've got Kevin here in Round Rock, Texas, and Lynn in New York, and Tina out in Washington State, and Mitch all the way in Northern Ireland, RMF Media Group in LA, John in Harrisburg, Anthony down in North Carolina, Jim in East Maine. I've got Ken in the UK, and Guy all the way on Thursday in New Zealand. Awesome. Thank you guys so much. It's always cool to see so many people tuning in from all around the world to talk about their love of photography. And hey, come on, hit that share button, right? Let your photography friends know that we are streaming live on YouTube right now. Or you can go ahead and you can share that link, tog.chat/live. I'm going to grab that for you. I'm going to put it in the chat window right now. And as always, Twitter, Facebook, they're the fastest way to get the word out. So how can I help you with your photography tonight? Start posting your questions, and I'll do my best to answer them all in the next 60 minutes. And remember, this is a gear-free zone. I will discuss anything having to do with the hows and whys behind creating great images and even how to market yourself. And that can include gear if it's a question about how to do something. Just don't ask me what your next camera should be. In fact, come on, don't listen to anyone on YouTube about a decision like that. So look, this week in photo news, a major Japanese company announced a full-frame camera with a 12 megapixel sensor, and people are excited. Wait, what, 12 megapixels? Yeah, I'm referring to the Sony, the a7S III. Look, I'll tell you honestly that based on the sample footage I've seen, it looks like Sony has built a very nice video-centric camera, and its files have a nice little bit of texture to them. Digital grain, if you will. You know, that stuff that people have been trying to get away from for years by purchasing cameras with 4 times as many megapixels? Early reports state that there are no overheating issues like those experienced by the recently announced Canon models. Now, it is worth noting that Canon was quick to patent a cooling adapter so that you can actually use the video features in their new cameras if, of course, you're willing to spend even more money. But more importantly than all of this gear nonsense, and this is the big one, it was announced today that the Potato Photographer of the Year has been crowned by the UK-based photo contest or photo website PhotoCrowd. Now you heard correctly, Potato Photographer of the Year, and that title goes to a photographer named Ray Spence, and that's his image that you see right there. Now, Ray apparently joined PhotoCrowd just in time to enter and win this contest, which sounds like the fix may have been in on this one, if you ask me. But hey, patata, let's all congratulate Ray Spence for this monster shot of a potato getting a trim. Right? Really? Okay. So, in coronavirus versus photography-related news, the Consumer Electronics Show that was scheduled for January in Las Vegas will be online only in 2021. CES, as the show is affectionately known, is often the first show of the year to offer new gear announcements. This year's Photo Plus in New York City is still being advertised as a go for the end of October. But I honestly don't see how that is going to happen safely, especially since the mayor of New York has pretty much shut down the city already until the end of September. I do hope, for the sake of Photo Plus, that they've been putting plans in place to do a virtual show, but as yet, we've heard nothing. Also, in the winter months like CES, PPA, Professional Photographers of America, hosts Imaging USA, which is scheduled for Grapevine, Texas in mid-January. And the same company that holds Photo Plus, that's Emerald Expositions, they're scheduled to host WPPI in Las Vegas in early March. Now, like I said, I hope PPA has I do know that PPA has a backup to be able to do a virtual show if things are still bad, but no word yet on WPPI. I do hope that they're working on a backup. Anyway, it goes. I think that we are going to be seeing a lot more virtual events in the future, even after the pandemic ends. You know, as the industry gets better at using all of the online meeting and event technology, the simple fact is that they can reach more people for less money with these online tools. Now, certainly, look, I hope that we don't lose our trade shows completely, but I do expect that we will see more virtual online opportunities to learn about gear and the how-tos of photography. Now, I've got 2 quick announcements for you this week. My online presentation about shoot prep, how to plan a great shoot, is coming up on August 11th, and I will share the links to that also in the chat window for you right now. And following that one, on August 18th, will be the psychology and techniques behind photographing beauty. So let me give you that. And for those of you that may be interested, I also have a free online presentation coming up on August 6th. That's titled Exposure. What is correct exposure? So I hope to see you at one of these classes soon. And I'm going to give you that link for the exposure one right here. And now you've got all those. So be sure to check those out. And be sure to sign up for my email newsletter so that you're notified as soon as new classes are added. Also, for those of you who are making video slideshows and portfolios and even creating short movies, if you haven't learned the importance of good music to go with your piece, you will very quickly. So I have a 10% off code to share with you from soundstripe.com, which is the company that I use for my audio clips. The discount code that you need to use is Edelman10. I am going to share that link with you right now in the chat window, and you will also find it, of course, in the description below the video. Now, full disclosure, this is an affiliate link, so if you use it, I'll make a couple dollars, but you won't find that 10% discount anywhere except here on TOGCHAT. This is the company that I get my clips from. Okay, that's all our business. Let's get into tonight's questions. How can I help you improve your photography? Now, I do have a few questions that came in from my Facebook groups, which, by the way, if you're not a member of my Facebook groups, what the heck? If you're a people shooter like me, you should join the I Shoot People group. And for general photo topics, join the Tog Knowledge group. And shocker, I'm going to share the links in the chat window for you so that you can check them out. I would love to have you in the groups. Okay? All right. So I had a few questions that came in early from my Facebook groups. I'm going to hit those first. That'll give you guys some time. I've seen there's some really good questions that came in here while I was doing the intro. So I will get to those momentarily. And Kevin, thank you so much for the super chat. Greatly appreciated. If you haven't posted a question yet, Kevin, I hope that you have one. And if you did post it, I will get to it for sure. But thank you again so much. Okay. So the first question that I have here tonight comes from Lawrence Tilley. And Lawrence says, I attended your file management webinar and even took notes. But of course, the note that I wanted is the one that I must have missed. Could you remind me what was the service that you recommended on the basis of value for the money for online backups? Lawrence, that is Backblaze, or backblaze.com is the name of the company. I do have a link for you here, and the name of the company. I will put it in the chat for you so that you have that. So don't lose it this time, okay? So you can get all the information from there. All right. And the next question that I have here comes from Vladimir. I'm using frequency separation for skin work, but I do it really softly. I'm afraid to achieve a plastic skin. Is there a way to know when and where to stop, or is it just personal taste? Vladimir, you will get a lot of people that will give you different opinions in terms of where you should stop, where you shouldn't stop, etc. Here's the thing. I like to use the reference of what you hear on cooking shows, actually. When the chefs are putting seasoning on the food, you'll hear them say, flavor to taste. Certainly, if you ask 6 photographers or 10 photographers what's the right amount, you will probably get 6 or 10 completely different answers. Everybody does have kind of a personal taste. My guidelines, I like my skin, I want my skin to have texture, meaning there has to be pores. However, on the flip side of that, I also want my skin in my images to be perfect. I don't want, I don't want flaws. I don't want any pimples. I don't want wrinkles, things like that. Because keep in mind, I'm doing mostly beauty work for me. So the third thing that I would encourage you to consider, other than it's really, really up to you, I'm a fan of at least having some texture, but I would also encourage you that it depends, Vladimir, on what is the intent behind the picture? Meaning, if you're shooting a portrait that someone is going to use for a job resume or something like that, you probably definitely do not want to go heavy-handed. You probably do want to use the frequency separation very softly and keep things essentially, to a bare minimum. In other words, just enough to give that person a little bit of polish. Certainly, if you're doing beauty work, kind of along the lines of what I do, then it's really entirely up to you in terms of how much you would like to use or not like to use. Okay, so I hope that helps. All right, Craig Allen, I see your note about the Facebook link not working. It's possible because of the way I pasted it, they ran together. I assure you the links are correct. So here, let me just separate it. I should have done that the first time. And this should get you. So now there's 2 links there, Craig, and there they are. I've put them back in there so that hopefully this time, if you click on one, you'll just get one, and it should be good to go. Okay? All right. Next question I have here is from Caleb Hale. Caleb says, I'm looking for some subtle ways to help people get back on track when they freeze up in the middle of a shoot. He goes on to say, specifically, I work with a lot of models of differing experiences. Some come with a larger repertoire of poses and movements in front of the camera. Some don't, and it's always obvious when they've hit a mental wall and suddenly don't know what to do next. Makes for a few less than stellar frames. How do I help them get back on track without making it obvious that I'm aware they're struggling? Perhaps more importantly, what can I do ahead of time to ensure that it doesn't happen? So, Caleb, hopefully you will find my answer helpful. However, I have to be honest with you, you may not entirely like my answer. So I would suggest, Caleb, that the person that is at fault for this dilemma is you, period. And that is because you are, I hate to say it, but I've got to be me. People don't like when I say this in a sentence because it's not necessarily a great thing, but I would suggest you're being lazy. Okay? Now, I threw that bomb. Let me explain. So first of all, I have worked with extremely experienced models, and I have worked with many, many, many inexperienced models. If you follow me much and you heard me talk much on here, you know that I routinely explain I'd much rather work with someone who has not been photographed many times and who's not trying to go out and build a big modeling career, because then I can mold them and shape them the way that I want. All that aside, based on your question, you make it very clear that basically you're one of those photographers who puts the model in front of the camera and says, okay, cool, go. And then you pick up your camera and you hide behind your camera and you go click, 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 click. And maybe every now and then you tell them this is great, this is good, whatever. That's not how it works, man. It's just not. No model is that good. They're just not. Because I'm confident that we can go and we can look at your images with all the models that you love, that were amazing posers, and we're going to find that you have repetition in your poses, meaning you have multiple images with the same poses or very, very similar poses. And that's because even the girls that are very confident posing and moving around, they're actually not that good at posing. This is not an insult on the girls, by the way, so that you guys don't get me in trouble. It's simply human. They can't see what it looks like. So, you get the girl who's doing, click pose, click pose, click pose, click pose, click pose. And basically you're shooting 100 frames, 20 frames, 50 frames, 1,000 frames. It doesn't matter how many frames you shoot, but you're pretty much hoping that you catch a moment. That's not good photography. That's definitely not efficient photography. And that does not lead to consistent photography. So what you need to do, and the irony of it is, Caleb, is the inexperienced models are the ones that are going to be better at it because they don't have bad habits already. See, these girls that you're talking about that you like, I'm willing to bet that you didn't get them through modeling agencies and pay for a modeling agency. I'm willing to bet that they're girls that you found on like Instagram and Model Mayhem and Facebook, and they've got a following, so they're supposedly good, okay? Well, the problem is those girls, they come with a lot of baggage attached. They've worked with a lot of photographers that do what you do, which means they've been allowed to develop a lot of bad habits. And good luck if that girl does something routinely that you don't want her to do, and you explain it to her, and you try to change that habit, she's going to last for like 10 seconds and go right back to it. Those are the girls that you explain to them, okay, so look, your light's over here, so I need to make sure that your face is going in this direction all the time. You can move your body like anywhere you want as long as your face is here. And I guarantee they'll last no more than 10 seconds before the head goes over here. And they're out of the light because they've got these habits built in. So the girl with no habits, the one that you're perceiving as nervous and kind of hitting a wall, your phrase, they're actually the better ones to work with. The reason they're hitting a wall, though, is because you have challenged them. You have said, okay, go, right? So that's a challenge. That's not fair. Why would you want to challenge the person that you're working with? You should want to collaborate with your models and your makeup artists, not challenge them. So how are you going to deal with this in advance? Instead of asking the girl to entertain you for 5 minutes by pose, 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 go into the shot with 3, 4, 5 poses and then work the crap out of those 3, 4, 5 poses. Tweaking your camera angles, tweaking head tilts, shoulder adjustments, things like that, and refining them and making them amazing. Because what you're also doing by doing that, Caleb, is you're taking the work part of it out of the modeling for the model. You're allowing her to free up her bandwidth. And this is not like some joke about models being foolish or stupid or something. No, this is human, right? If they're having to come up with poses and do all the posing, well, then they're thinking about, what should I do? Instead of having to think about what they should be doing, have them think about a character, the mood, the emotion, the expression, the overall physicality. Is it tense and strong? Is it meek and mild? What is it? And communicate that and work with them. So if you start with a couple of ideas that are simple, and with the plan being to let the model really kind of get comfortable in that pose and that concept, and then really focus on the character and build it, you'll take your work to a whole new level. So, long answer, but that's how you're going to eliminate that problem. And trust me, you're always better off working with people that don't have tons of that baggage. Even some agency models come with that baggage, but they tend, it depends on the market, it depends on the agency, unfortunately, but they tend to not have as much of it. But still, to be clear, even an agency model, there are very, very few agency models in the world that are that amazing. that are going to give you something unique every time. I'm not saying they don't exist, but there's very few. That's the challenge, okay? Because it is extremely difficult for a model to be able to do that. So your best bet, find the people with little to no experience and work with them and really work your shots. That's how you're going to get great stuff, okay? All right. Next question I have here, from Aaron Edwards. Let's turn Caleb's off. And I got this one from Aaron. There we go. Turn Caleb's off. Okay. Is it possible to have a successful photography business only using social media and not having a website? So, Aaron, this is a really interesting question in the sense that the short answer is yes, but. If I give you the medium length answer, it is yes, but I wouldn't. Or yes, but you shouldn't. Or yes, but don't. And here's the thought process. I can go out and I can set up a new website. Let's just see here. So I recommend a company, and this is going to come up in another question in a minute, so you want to follow along for the second question, but I recommend a company called Format.com. I'll tell you more about them. I'm not sponsored by them. I don't make any money for saying that. They charge $12 a month if you pay for the whole year up front, or $16.99 a month if you pay it monthly, okay? Awesome websites, a whole bunch of features. I'm not going to go into a sales pitch. You can research it. It's Format.com. In fact, I will share the link here for you guys to look at it. Now, here's the thing. All right. Since you're trying to build a successful business, there is still an expectation amongst most clientele. And when I say most clientele, it doesn't matter if we're talking about portrait clients, wedding clients, product clients, doesn't matter who or what it is, that they are going to be able to go to a website and look at nice, large, luscious images of your work. If your plan, Aaron, is to actually make money, if you are not able to generate enough work to cover $12 a month, maybe you should be looking at a different career path. I mean, I'm just going to be honest, right? So I have worked with some students who have come out of college, flat broke, college bills to pay, trying to get a business started, the idea of, what can we do? How can we get things going? And I've worked with them to kind of start to build some interest on social media, with the goal being that as soon as they generated any income, they were going to build a website, okay? So the website's kind of really important. Now, some people, and this is going to lead to a question that's coming up, Aaron, some people will mention Wix.com. And Ajax, I'm not forgetting your question, but I'm going to dig into Ajax's question here, and then we'll be able to deal with the rest of my comments to you, Aaron. Ajax said here, I heard you recommend Format, but why not Wix? It's on many lists as one of the top web hosts. I'm a portrait photographer, which actually, no, it's not, Ajax, not even close. I'm going to prove that to you, okay? I'm currently using SmugMug. I'd like to customize my Contact Me template, but they have a set template, and after much inquiring with them, I don't believe that SmugMug plans on making that an option anytime soon. I'm looking for a web host where I can feature my work, have an About Me page, and a custom Contact Me page template that requires the user to enter a phone number to be reached at. Also, maybe some analytical tools. Okay, so I am going to really quick here do a Google search. Now, I have not done this in advance, so I have no idea what's going to come up, okay? But we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna hit one. In fact, actually, you know what? You guys can do it for yourself. Wix doesn't even come up. So here's the problem with Wix. So, Aaron, for you, Wix does offer a free option as well as a paid option, which is more expensive than Format. If you have any doubts about what I'm saying about Wix, folks, go to Google and type in the phrase, it's W-I-X, by the way, Wix sucks, and read the stuff that comes up. And better yet, don't just read the stuff that you see in the Google preview page, because Ajax, unfortunately, that's what you did with these sites that are recommending it. Wix built those sites. Wix paid for those sites. Unfortunately, if you do a little research in the web hosting community, and if you pay attention to what you see in Google search results, all of these different web hosts, they go out and they buy additional domain names and they create websites where they are literally claiming like, here's our rankings of the best web hosts. And of course, theirs is ranked tops. They're doing it for SEO to try and get to the top of the list. So there are actually very few comparisons out there that are legitimate third-party comparisons where their people aren't using affiliate links, because a lot of them, it is a third party, but all the links in it are affiliate links. So they're making money off of, generating those links. That's the thing. So I'm not making any money off of format.com. I want to be really clear. I make no money, $0. Okay. In fact, when you go to my website here, I'm just going to pull that off the screen. If you go to my website, gang, and you click on the portfolio link, this is actually now format.com, where you're looking at my images and you can scroll through my entire portfolio. You see these nice, massively big images. So if you've never had a chance to look through my portfolio, there's my portfolio, gang. If you've never looked at it, even just stuff that's shot for fun. These are all things that I've done with the Olympus cameras for Olympus, etc. And for those of you that maybe are Olympus shooters or considering Olympus, it'll tell you which Olympus camera, which lens, etc. So all that stuff, that's all hosted at Format. But so the challenge with Wix is their code, the HTML and the CSS and the JavaScript that goes behind their websites. It's clunky and it's cumbersome, period. Okay. Additionally, the free Wix, obviously they put ads on it and then they hold you hostage, to remove the ads. Wix is horrible at SEO. Horrible, horrible, horrible. And they give you very, very little control. The problem with Squarespace essentially looks like every other photographer out there, because every other YouTuber is like, and this video is sponsored by Squarespace. Okay. So, you want to, the nice thing about Format, to further that conversation, Format is designed for creatives. It's designed for photographers and artists and illustrators, etc., to be able to show off their work. So all of their themes that they have are really designed to feature artwork and such. Okay. So yeah, I'm completely on board with you, Ajax, with the idea of not using SmugMug. If you watch my video on websites, go to the YouTube channel, watch the video that I did probably about 2 years ago now on building websites. I talk about not using SmugMug and Zenfolio and those kind of websites for your primary website. If you're a photographer that is providing proofs online, which I discourage, but if you are, I would encourage you build your brochure website. Here's my brochure. This is the About Me page. Please contact me, that website. Build that on a platform like Format, or even your own WordPress site if you choose to do that much work, but I don't know why you would. And then still go ahead and use a SmugMug or a Pixieset or a Zenfolio for your proofing. Even though it's going to be a different web address, and even though it's going to be a slightly different look and feel, because you're not going to be able to get them to match completely. You can make the colors and everything match, but the layouts won't match completely. You've already got the customer. You've already found them. You've already worked with them. You've already connected with them by the time you're sending them off to look at their proofs and order prints at SmugMug or Pixieset or Zenfolio. So it's not causing a situation where it's going to confuse your client, so to speak. Okay. All right. So Aaron and Ajax, I hope that helps. And Ajax, I know you're a member of my mentor group, so we have a Zoom meeting tomorrow night. If you still have more questions or want to flush it out a little bit, make sure you bring it up during Zoom tomorrow, and we'll definitely go through that. Okay. All right, so Bob Ackerman has a question here, and that is, what do you recommend for achieving proper white balance in changing conditions? I remember watching a video where the guy suggested setting the camera for 5600K. Thoughts? Okay, so let's take that backwards. I always have thoughts, Bob. As far as a YouTube video where a guy suggested setting the camera for 5600K, I am going to give the guy, it wasn't me, I'm going to give him, him, the benefit of the doubt that you have potentially misunderstood part of what he was trying to say. If that's actually what he was telling you, like if you're shooting changing, lighting conditions, shoot at 5600K all the time, then that guy's a moron. You can quote me on that. Like, that makes no sense. Absolutely no sense. So let's take a step back for a second, right? You've got a situation where you want to change proper white balance or you want to maintain proper white balance in changing conditions. So what I'd actually ultimately like to know, Bob, is define changing conditions. Are we talking about, like, you know, it's a sunny day outside and the clouds come over and then they go away, that kind of changing conditions? Or are we like in a nightclub and there's a DJ and the lights are going from yellow to green to blue to pink to orange, you know, that kind of thing. So obviously, since things are changing all the time and changing rapidly, you definitely don't want to lock in at a set color temperature unless you know that all of those lights are operating at that color temperature. That's the key, right? And if it's like a nightclub scenario, they're probably not. If you're in daylight, you know, you could potentially pull that off. But the fact of the matter is, you also have to remember you're going to be shooting, hopefully, in RAW. So the reality of the practice is, if you're outside and it's that situation where the clouds come and go and all that kind of stuff, okay? The auto white balance on your camera, with pretty much any brand camera that's on the market today, literally, the auto white balance is going to work seamlessly and you will be good to go. If it's a situation like you're in that nightclub, well, then yeah, the challenge that you'll have with auto white balance is it's going to kind of potentially be all over the place. So, Bob's here. Good. So he just said mostly, here, let me take that off. He just gave me, you know, mostly outside type of conditions. Yes, the sun changing to partial sun or shade. Honestly, I would just leave your camera on auto white balance, Bob. It's going to be more than enough. And I will stand up for pretty much every brand on the market to say that kind of situation they can handle, no problem, no sweat. You're good to go. And depending on your taste, by the way, so let's just go back to that 5600K scenario. Here's what happens, right? Let's just say that you follow that YouTuber's advice and you're outside and it's one of those days where there's lots of clouds and they're coming and they're going and they're coming and going. So it's sunny, it's cloudy, it's really cloudy, it's kind of cloudy, it's very cloudy, it's not cloudy, it's sunny again, all that stuff. If you go with 5600K, number one, he's making an assumption that you're going to like the color balance for daylight at 5600K. Not everybody does because it's subjective. But here's the thing. Depending on how big the cloud cover is, when we get lots of cloud cover and it's getting dim, then that light is going to be much bluer than the light if we only have a little bit of cloud cover. So the problem of it is the color temperature in the scenes that you're shooting is changing. So to lock in on a color temperature, you're just going to be throwing your images all over the place. Now, you're shooting RAW, so you can fix it later, but fix it later is not ideal. Plus, really what you want to be able to see in your EVF or on your LCD screen, you want to be able to see your images as you're intending them to look. Right? You don't want to be doing a whole shoot like that and saying, you know, I'll fix it later because I'm shooting RAW. It's easy, okay? I mean, another thing that you can do, do I have mine here or do I not have mine here? I don't have mine here, sorry. You can use like a color checker passport. You can Google that, see what that is. It costs you about $100, but you can use a color checker passport if you're looking to get like perfectly matched color. But I'm not going to lie to you, I don't know why you would do that. I really don't. Are there reasons where it's worth your, or situations where it's worth your while? Yeah, but for the most part, no. Okay. Reasons being like if there's a situation that you're shooting maybe for a client and you've absolutely got to have that, you know, matching color balance across the board because of a product or an outfit that's in the shots, then it makes sense. Beyond that, the overwhelming majority of what you're doing, it's subjective. So it's really not that much of a problem. Okay. From Joe, what do you think of keeping a UV filter on your lens to help protect them, even if it adds another piece of glass to your lens? So, you know, what's interesting, Joe, that's a topic that comes under a lot of debate these days. Back in the day, it was not a subject of debate. You put a UV filter on your lens or you were an idiot. Done. End of conversation. And that was universally accepted. You know, fast forward to the year 2020, and what do we have? Number one, we have optics and the coatings on optics that are much more durable. much more finely tweaked. So your lenses are not going to scratch or damage as easily. I'm not recommending you take your filters off, gang. I'm just making a statement of fact. When we look at filters, we still have 50,000 foot here. We still have two kinds of UV filters. We have cheap ones and we have expensive ones. So cheap ones, 20, 30 bucks. Expensive ones, 100 bucks, right? The $100 ones tend to be thinner glass. They tend to be better coated, higher quality. So I will tell you what my practice is, Joe. I use UV filters on most of my lenses. If the lens will allow a UV filter to be put on, I use a UV filter. When I say it that way, because, for instance, my Olympus 7-14 zoom has a very round front to that lens. You're not putting a UV filter over the front of it. Now, that being said, Joe, there are times where I remove the filters intentionally to do shots. As an example, if you look at a lot of my beauty shots, you will see that I do a lot of scenarios where I do backlighting and I put a lot of light behind my subject and I let the light kind of flare past them and then I expose for that. UV filters will tend to dramatically lower the contrast of my shot. And depending on where my lights are in the back, or even if I'm using rim lights and they're in pretty close and I want to get that light in the shot and get flare, the UV filter can allow the light to basically hit the coating of the lens, bounce off the UV filter, bounce back to the lens, and what it does is it creates more flare. More than what I want and somewhat uncontrollable. So in situations like that, I will remove it. Flip side of that, just the other day, I went to visit my grandchildren to take a couple shots for a piece that I'm doing for Olympus that's coming up in a couple of weeks. And I left my house early in the morning, but I left my house air conditioned, got in the car, put my gear in the car, air conditioned, drove for 40 minutes, got out of the car and unpacked the gear, at which point the outside temperature was about 78, 79 degrees already, and immediately all my glass fogged up. Now, the nice part about that was, since I had made that mistake, I just pulled the filters off. There goes the fog. I'm good to go and shoot. And I was shooting within 5 minutes of arriving at their house. They have a brand new puppy. So I was doing some pictures of the grandkids, with the puppy, which, by the way, that reminds me of something here. I should have mentioned this earlier. For those of you, if you are taking pictures of kids, grandkids, that kind of stuff, I have an article that Olympus actually just tweeted about today. It's about capturing kids in motion. The techniques that I talk about in this article, they apply to pretty much every brand camera, so it's got nothing to do with Olympus cameras specifically, but all the images that are in there were shot with the EM1 Mark II, so yeah, you can check that out. I just put the link in the chat window for you. So Joe, short version is UV filters as long as you're buying good filters, and then understand that there are still times to take the filters off. But I am definitely of the mindset, better safe than sorry. I'd rather have that filter on there, but I'm going to make sure it's a good filter. Otherwise, I'm just kind of shooting myself in the foot with it. Okay? All right. Let's see here. Did I get everybody? And Bob Frayne, I got a question from here, and then we're going to dive into the chat thread and get those that are there. From Bob, are there times when constant lighting is preferred to strobes? So he's asking about advantages or disadvantages to using constant lighting. So let's do it backwards. Advantages or disadvantages to using constant lighting. We are definitely reaching a point, and I have a few YouTube videos about this, Bob. We're reaching a point where constant lighting is definitely very viable. It's also much more cost effective. It's smaller, it's lighter, it's more practical. The super portable stuff is still a little bit on the pricey side, but especially for doing like studio stuff or shooting in the home, or still being able to transport it as long as you have AC power available. Constant lighting is definitely a legitimate and serious option. Other advantages to constant lighting is it's actually a little bit easier to learn lighting with constant lighting because essentially you're creating a WYSIWYG situation. WYSIWYG, what you see is what you get. Okay, you put a light here, you get a shadow over there. Vice versa, you move it around, the shadow moves around, right? So you're able to see your results kind of in real time. It can be very helpful for learning about lighting, learning about light placements, learning about light ratios, or so we say the power of lighting, etc. So in that sense, very, very good. Depending upon your subject's eye color, constant lighting can also be a benefit. A perfect example would be photographing someone with bright blue eyes. Using constant lighting, it's going to tend to get the pupils to constrict, which means that you will photograph more of the color of the eyes. The mistake that photographers will frequently make when photographing a person that has bright color eyes is working with strobes, but working in kind of a dimly lit room or a dimly lit studio. And what happens is their pupils expand, which leaves less of the color. So they lose that gorgeous color that the person has in their eyes. So, if a person's got really dark brown eyes or almost black eyes, etc., then it's certainly not as big a deal. But if you've got eye color that you want to really bring out, you want to see in your shot, and you don't want to spend all kind of time doing it in post and risk having it look fake, well, then you either want to work with constant light or you want to make sure that you're in a bright environment so that you are constricting the pupils and making sure that you can see the light. But Bob, I'm a huge fan of constant lighting. Part of the challenge at this point, and I'm going to make an assumption since you're asking this question, I have a feeling that you're at a point where you're starting to get into lighting and deciding, should I buy this or should I buy that? For those of you that may be in that situation where it's like, okay, I want to get into lighting and I don't know if I should buy constant first or if I should buy strobes first. I'm going to contradict much of what I just said, but let me explain. I am still of the old school mentality, buy the strobes first. Buy the strobes first and work with that because ultimately the strobes are going to be more versatile. Now, if you've got lots of disposable income and money's not an issue, then yes, start with the constant lights. That's cool. But if money is a factor, as I explain all the time, do your research. Don't just go out and buy a random strobe, right? Do your research, figure out what lighting system you want to work with, literally map out your dream lighting system on paper, and then don't buy it. Just buy one. Buy one light, one trigger, one stand. Boom. And start working with one light. And then you build and you add to the system as you go. So whether it's going to be like the Godox system or even a Pro Photo system, any of those types of things are fine, but you want to basically build on it. Keep it simple. Learn them one light at a time so that you don't overwhelm yourself. So Bob, hopefully that helps. Okay. All right, and let's see here. So I got everybody there. So let's get back into the questions here. So this question came in early. Jay Thomas, hopefully you heard my response. He's asking about whether or not I've heard any news about Photo Plus Expo in New York. Literally, the only news that I know of to date is that they are still advertising aggressively. I get ads from them, like email like notices like every other day. I see ads on my social media feeds pretty much like every day. I know that Olympus, long before they even announced that they were going to be up for sale, said, no, because of COVID, we're not doing it. They're the only manufacturer that has made that announcement at this point. But I can tell you that none of the camera manufacturers are doing live in-person events at this point. So even though none of them have said, hey, we're not going to do this, there's not a single one of them that are doing live in-person events right now. At least not here in the United States, okay? So, the folks at Photo Plus would hate me for saying this, but I will tell you two things, honestly. Number one, I'm sorry, because I hope I get to speak there again, but I really hope that they don't do it this year. Unfortunately, we are just not ready in this country. We're simply not, okay? I would much rather see them do a virtual online presentation this year. And, we need to get through to the other side of this pandemic. I honestly think that if they do that event in October, it's going to be a lot like what you're reading about with Major League Sports here in the United States right now. You know, they came up with this great plan. They were going to isolate the teams. They were going to keep them separated so they couldn't interact with people, all this stuff. And already their whole season's like shot. Proud to say, right here in Pennsylvania is where it all went south. But yeah, I just don't see it happening. So, you know, I hope we get back to it next year, but that's kind of my guess there. All right. Okay, let's see. What did I have next here? Scrolling on down. John Bivens was finally able to purchase a mannequin. What's the name of the program that I use for testing lighting scenarios? I'll type it here in the chat, John. It is Set Light 3D. If you Google that phrase, you will see that it's made by a company called Elixir Software. John, you're a member of my mentoring group. Do not pay for it until you get the discount code from me. I have a discount code from them, okay? So it's part of your benefits from the mentoring group. You can download the free trial and get started playing with it, but don't pay for it until I give you the discount code, okay? So, but I highly recommend it. It's great, great program. Beverly, whoops, let's get her back. There it is. Beverly, I know you have done weddings before. I have, unfortunately, and I lived to talk about it. That's the amazing part. If you only had a 35 millimeter or a 50 millimeter lens, which would be your choice? I have a 50, but do I need to buy a 35 millimeter or do I need to cancel the... Beverly, you only give me part of the question. Where's the rest of the question? Beverly, come back. Type me the wrong rest of the question. Do I need to cancel the what? Okay. Yeah, tell me the rest of it, because they're both great lenses, but I can also think of other lenses that I'd like to have, so I'd like to know a little bit more about what you were going to ask me there. Okay. Alvin, how do you get out of the box if you learned the rules of photography, like the rules of third, love your last webinar, etc.? Well, thank you. First of all, actually, I really enjoyed that webinar, and I have a lot of fun with that one. Honestly, Alvin, I've spent my whole adult life trying to get out of the box because I learned all those stupid rules really, really early on. And I shouldn't say that. That was actually an incorrect statement. Let me rephrase that to be more accurate. I didn't spend my entire adult life. I spent much of my adult life in the box content. Like, I knew those things, so that made me better than average, right? Not even close. It's really been probably the last 5 years, actually, since I started my YouTube channel and started presenting, doing talks, Alvin, that I've really been able to get out of the box. And honestly, the way that I've been able to do that is by intentionally trying to fail. Meaning, you know, I want to take a picture and I have this idea, but, you know, you're not supposed to do it that way because this or that, whatever. And the idea being, let's go do it that way. Let's intentionally do that. And let's just experiment. Examples, when I became an Olympus shooter, they had this feature called Live Composite, which is really meant for shooting star trails and things like that. I kept looking at that feature thinking, that is so cool, but I can't use it. And it's like I was determined. So finally, one day, I just went into my studio for about 4 hours with my mannequin and said, okay, how can I do something interesting with Live Composite? And finally, it like, you know, the light bulb went on. I realized, like, oh my gosh, I could paint backgrounds in real time. How cool is that? And then from there, you know, that opened up a set of floodgates where, like, you know, anything with color and light I could put behind the subject and draw with and paint with. The idea with the video that I did with the LED TV screen as a portrait background. I literally was watching the news one night and realized, you know, they're sitting in front of television screens. Why can't I do that with a portrait? Wow, now I've got, you know, all these options. So the way you get out of the box, Alvin, is really by, number one, valuing that thought process. Number two, putting in the time and the effort, really, really important. And really, just like anything else in life and in photography, what you're doing is you're training yourself, you're teaching yourself and developing a new set of thought processes so that you're essentially leaving all of those rules as far behind as possible and really kind of thinking without the rules and just looking for things that oftentimes don't work. But the beauty of it is you try something and it doesn't work. That's when you pause and you have to look at it and say, well, how can I make it work? Or maybe that doesn't work. And indeed, it looks like crap. But you know what? I like this piece of what's there. So let me take that and let me explore that. And you know, we're all guilty of that, folks. As photographers, you notice my hand's up. We're all guilty of it. We go out and we shoot a series of pictures. It could be 10 frames. It could be 1,000 frames. We come back, we download our images into Photoshop, or we look at them in Bridge or Luminar or whatever software you use, and we pick the one or the two or the three that we love. We're happy because we got these 1, 2, or 3 images that they're epic, they look amazing. We put them on social media. Everybody's like thumbs up and hearts and wow, and my God, you're amazing. But what we don't do is we don't look at the images that we didn't use. You know, the ones that suck, the ones that either got deleted or we just filed away. We didn't take the time with those images to ask one very simple question. It's my favorite 3-word question. We didn't ask why. Why don't I like this one? And then the follow-up is what? What could I have done differently to this that would have made it work? Now, in some cases, maybe you did do the different thing. You realized that on the fly, and that's how you got to the shot that you loved, right? But in others, it's a great exercise to go through because even though it's after the fact, even though you don't have a camera in your hand, even though your subject is still not sitting in front of you, you're actually learning and using the same thought processes and the same visual thought processes as if you were actually shooting. So it's a learning opportunity that we all skip out on, and we shouldn't. I will say in my defense, I do it, not nearly as much as I should, but it is an exercise that I like to put myself through frequently. For me, the tipping point is usually if I've done a session and I'm not like over the moon with that session. You know, I'm happy, I got my shot, it's good, I'm gonna be able to use it, yada, yada, yada. But I'm not like, yeah. That's the session where I'm gonna make sure that I go back through and it's literally ask the questions why. I take great pride in being able to solve problems like that real time when I'm working. So when I come away from it and it's not like, oh my God, I'm so excited, I take that as a failure, and that's when I have to go back and I have to kind of reanalyze what my decisions were. So that's how I use it. So that would be my advice, okay? Let's see here. So we got that from Alvin. Let's see, Mitch Morgan. My tip for attending Joe's class is don't try to take notes on the first watch, but jot down the time of your favorite points so you can find them quickly in the replay and then make notes then. Mitch, actually, that's a great idea. And thank you. I may even suggest that in the upcoming classes. All of my online classes that I'm doing, folks, once you've registered for the class, obviously, hopefully you make it a point to attend the class so that you can interact. That's the beauty of this, all right? There's live interaction. But then you receive an email about an hour to an hour and a half after the class with a replay link. And so you're able to watch the replay for 48 hours, which you can, go back through and take more notes. So I am a big fan. And it really is. I mean, that's a great suggestion, Mitch. I'm a big fan of when you do classes like that, online classes, things like that, try not to take notes. Now, I want to be clear, right? My wife is the cognitive psychologist, right? I understand that for some people, the note-taking it's kind of mandatory and it's an absolute must. This is what I like about Mitch's suggestion here is the possibility of actually not taking the time to try and write down everything, but just jotting down the time that it is into the presentation so that you can go back. There is a tremendous amount of value, and the science supports it, to basically experiencing the information first, and then indeed going back through and really culling out the pieces that are most important and most valuable to you. So thanks for sharing that, Mitch. That's actually a great idea. Okay. All right. Scrolling on down here from Kevin. And Kevin, thanks again for the super chat. I've been thinking about taking a photo class at Austin Community College. Any thoughts about formal classroom training? So, and I saw that Steve followed up with, I've taken classes at Austin and they have a great program. So first of all, I think what you have to understand about any kind of college programs, or for that matter, even the classes that I teach online, it doesn't matter. the school or the instructor or the presenter doesn't actually teach you photography, right? I don't teach you photography. I really try to kind of point you in the direction to get you to go experience photography, right? So I think the key, is to understand that taking classes, if you like formal instruction, is valuable. I will tell you for a fact, hands down, there is nothing that you are going to learn in a community college photography program in today's world that you cannot learn yourself. So here's the challenge. Don't read the course description. Don't take Steve's word for it. And I'm not saying Steve's word is wrong. I'm saying that's not the way to make your decision. What you need to do is you need to understand that part of a college professor's job is to interact with prospective students. So what you should be doing is a couple of things. Number one, you should be researching the instructors. 2, email them. 3, better yet, ask if you can go meet them. Or better yet, ask if you can go and audit a class. If you don't know what auditing a class means, it means basically just go attend a class, sit in and listen, okay? You want to make sure, number one, that this person is teaching things that you want to learn about. Because I'll tell you right now, one of the things that you're going to get, Kevin, if you go take a college class, high likelihood you're going to get the rule of thirds and all that crap shoved down your throat. If you're asking me if that's valuable, God, no. Seriously, don't do it. All the science proves it wrong. Just because it's been done for decades doesn't mean it's right. There's so many things in our world today that have been done for decades that are really screwed up. And we know it. And we see how hard it is to change, yes, but that doesn't make it right. We all acknowledge that it's wrong. So, yeah, you need to do your research into what do the classes really entail? What are the instructors really looking for? I mean, I'll give you an example, and I can say this now because finally this person retired. Unfortunately, I don't expect the program to get any better, but the college that my wife teaches at, they had a photography instructor there for about 30 years. He's a very nice guy, very qualified in terms of he knows his stuff with film, doesn't know squat when it comes to digital. In fact, really doesn't. Makes it really clear he hates digital photography. I stumbled on, this was a couple years ago when I was teaching my creativity class at the school, I stumbled on the syllabus for digital photography 101, right? So this is, it's a 10-week syllabus. The middle 4 weeks of digital photography 101, the students had to shoot film, develop the film, and then go scan the negatives and then play in Photoshop. Like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, right? And the thing of it is, to be really clear, Kevin, that's not uncommon when it comes to colleges. The only thing I'll say in defense of colleges is you have to understand that the challenge that colleges have is 2 things. 1, tenure. Tenure's the worst thing ever. From a consumer standpoint, if you're a college professor, you love it. My wife loves it. I'm glad she has tenure. That's wonderful. But the fact of the matter is, when it comes to the consumer, the student, tenure's the worst thing ever. Because once a professor is tenured, they don't have to work that hard. It's an honor system, period. Okay? Number 2, we're talking about an industry, photography, where the technology right now is still leapfrogging itself. Okay? So it's extremely expensive for colleges to keep up with the technology, which makes it a challenge. And since their professors are tenured, or if their professors are tenured, their professors probably came out of school 10, 15, 20 years ago. They don't know this technology. They haven't actually used it in real life, in the real world. So it's the wild card crapshoot of, have they kept up with the technology? Do they really know their stuff? Or are they basically just going to teach you foundational photography, which is, rule of thirds, Fibonacci spirals, exposure triangle, which is bogus, all that stuff. And that's another one of those great myths that is routinely taught in school. The exposure triangle is a complete and utter waste unless you're shooting film. And even then, it's actually not great to use. But in digital, the exposure triangle is ridiculous. It makes no sense. If you have any doubts about that, take the class that I have coming up. It's free, okay? It's all about exposure. What is correct exposure? And I will break it down for you in that class and prove to you clearly that the exposure triangle is pointless with digital cameras. So I know, Kevin, that probably didn't give you a clear answer, and I'm sorry, but bottom line is education is always good. But be careful about education that's going to stick you in a box and really mess you up, or education that's really not going to help you with the technology that you want to use today. So you need to reach out to the instructors or the professors, have conversations with them, talk to them, and that's how you're going to figure that out. Okay? All right. Let's see here. Just scrolling down, just about done here, but we'll see if I can get, let's see, Ashish. How to know what you love to photograph and what if it's not a practical thing for you? For example, doing landscapes while I have a full-time job, etc. Hashish, I'm not sure exactly what your question is. I mean, in terms of, and I realize it's probably a language thing, so I apologize, but I want to try and help you out here. In terms of how to know what you love to photograph, it's a matter of like what excites you, what inspires you, what interests you, right? If it inspires you and it interests you, then that's what you should love. Even in terms of making money, if you're not trying to make money shooting things that you are passionate about and that you really enjoy, you will ultimately fail. I guarantee you will ultimately fail. I hear so many new photographers that'll be like, well, I really like doing this, but I know there's more money in weddings, so I'll shoot weddings. You know, and that lasts like 6 months to a year, and then they're out. They're done, okay? Because weddings suck if you don't enjoy doing weddings. If you enjoy doing weddings, they're the most awesome thing in the world to shoot. But if you don't enjoy doing weddings, it's painful. It's really painful. So, you know, that's the challenge. Okay. All right. Scrolling on down here. Let's try and get one or two more in here. From Lane. How we doing, Lane? Doing free casual shoots for practice. People are starting to pay me for the work without asking and just extra income. Is there a point where I am making too much and need to start a business? There is no such thing as making too much, Lane, ever. However, I believe, and do not take my advice. I am not an accountant and I am not an attorney. But I believe it's basically once you've exceeded like $600, then in theory you should be claiming it on your taxes, etc. So if you are legitimately starting to make extra money, then, you know, you should be making a decision, well, am I willing to kind of skirt the rules and work under the table, or do I need to do this above board? In which case, then yes, you need to talk to an accountant and, you know, take things from there. The answer to that question is a tax question, and I will not give tax advice or legal advice. I avoid that like the plague. I don't believe that anyone should be asking someone on YouTube about that. So, Luis, have you been using a new graphics tablet? And if so, what do you think? I have been using it, not as much as I wanted to. So I'll explain. And by the way, I love it. I absolutely love it. I am going to do a video on it. So turns out, so you guys know I frequently talk about it. You can see them. I've got two monitors here. So an iMac and then another 27-inch monitor. The way the tablet works, the software that it uses, it only supports using two monitors. So basically, in order to get the tablet to work, I have to disconnect my secondary monitor because the tablet becomes the secondary monitor. So if my situation were, you know, was just like, hey, I've got one computer, one monitor, boom, then yeah, it'd be perfect. For this situation, and this is where I do most of my retouching work without, of course, the TV lights on, but this is where I do most of my work. So actually what I've been doing lately, and I'm having a lot of fun with it, you've heard me say on here many, many times that I'm not a fan of shooting, I'm not a fan of retouching on laptops at all. But using the graphics tablet on my laptop, I've actually been doing some retouching at night in bed before I go to sleep. It's awesome. Absolutely love it. So yes, there will be a video coming. That was the one hiccup that I found and the only hiccup that I found so far. So I can't use it for my primary workflow. I still got the Wacom sitting down here for that, but I'm finding more and more reasons to use it and work off of the laptop, which is sweet, really sweet. Okay. Let's see here. What else did we miss? Let's see if we can get David Huff. What's your opinion on a photographer who only used one lens during a photo shoot? David, I would actually have to see the images. I've done shoots before with only ever one lens. I frequently do shoots now with only ever one lens. It depends on what the shoot is, what the subject matter is, what the photographers, and how good they turned out. So, I mean, I've even seen photographers go out and shoot an entire wedding with one lens. It's all a matter of what's your visual style and how good a job do you do with that, okay? The gear does not make the picture. The gear is just the tool, right? So you don't have to have tons of gear to do good work, and you don't have to have tons of gear to do interesting work. You have to have a good eye to do interesting work. You can have all the gear in the world, and basically all you're going to do, if you use all that gear, if you go and you have 10 lenses and you manage to use all 10 lenses at a wedding, all you're doing is you're creating a bunch of gimmick shots, but you're not really necessarily creating great shots. Okay. All right. Let's see. Bob's Great TV. Joe, are you still going to do these as podcasts or just keep them on YouTube? I'm working on being able to do it as podcasts, Bob. I'm not going to make you a promise, but I'm working on it. You'll notice I've changed the format of TalkChat a little bit more, so it's a little bit more podcast friendly. My next step, which I think I am almost there, but I have not had a chance to test it yet. I was having audio issues in the past when I was converting them, and honestly, it just sounded horrible. Audio has been my Achilles heel with all of this. I'm not going to lie. But I'm getting closer, and I think I'm just about there. So I would love to be able to get them back. So stay tuned, hopefully. Okay. And Donna, okay, last two questions here, and that's it. I get a ton of emails from Thumbtack. Any experience with that? I personally know. I would tell you that it's certainly an option. But honestly, I would only use, as a photographer, I would only use some Thumbtack if you're maybe just trying to break into a market and get some momentum going. But long term, understand that companies and clients that go to Thumbtack are looking to get stuff done inexpensively. Now, Thumbtack's not as inexpensive or cheap as like Fiverr.com, but it's still cheap. So the problem that you're going to have in terms of building a business via Thumbtack is that ultimately you're going to reach a point where you're working way too hard in terms of what the return is. So to kind of get some momentum going, get some cash flow, maybe get you access to some clientele, absolutely, not a problem at all. But do understand that that is not a long-term plan, not as a photographer. That's not going to work well. So, Alvin, Joe, I watch your exposure webinar. Should I watch it again, or is it always the same, or do you ever add to it? So actually, each of these webinars that I have done so far, I have done three times, and then they're going to kind of go on hiatus for like 6 months. I have actually tweaked them and added to them each time. So not dramatic changes, but yes, the exposure webinar will have it'll have a few tweaks from the last time. I don't have any new information that I can tell you today is lined up for it, Alvin. But if you're afraid of missing it, I would tell you, hey, it's one of the free ones. Sign up, and you can scroll through the video and see what you might have missed. Okay? All right. Last one for the night. Tenderheart. Say that one more time so that it's very clear of using the creative eye to determine your shots. I thank you very much for mentioning a very important fact, and I enjoy your videos. Keep up the good work. Yeah, it's all about the creative aspect, period. I mean, and it is worth noting, hopefully you all get this, my little news report in the beginning where I kind of poke fun at Sony and poke fun at Canon and poke fun at the industry. It's really just kind of a reminder, gang. And I'm going to keep doing the new stuff. Sometimes it'll be very serious. Sometimes it's going to be a little snarky just because it's kind of fun to, to poke fun at things. All right. I think all of this innovation, all these new cameras, all these new new pieces of technology we're getting, they're awesome. Clearly, you see some of these companies are struggling with it, like Canon's running into some issues, but they'll get those issues worked out, and they're going to put out great cameras, just like they all do, right? Interestingly, some of the things that, Sony's catching up with in video and things that Canon's trying to do with their cameras with video and that. Companies like Olympus, companies like Blackmagic, other companies, Panasonic, have had a lot of these features for quite a while, right? So, they're not even new technology in that sense. And we just, we get all hyped. But I will admit, I did find it humorous. Sony came out with a 12 megapixel camera and like the world didn't explode. If Nikon, Canon, or Olympus or Panasonic, launched a 12 megapixel camera, people will be like, oh. So anyway, but seriously, it's good for all of them. So, all right, gang, I am way overdue. It is 7:10. You guys know the drill. Thank you so much. It's been a great week. Really good conversation tonight. I hope this information has been helpful for you. Hope to see you back here next week. And as always, please remember these words.
Thanks for watching another live episode of TOGCHAT. Now, pick up that camera and shoot something, because your best shot is your next shot. So keep learning, keep thinking, and keep shooting. Adios.